People organize their brains with conversation. If they don't have anyone to tell their story to, they lose their minds. Like hoarders, they cannot unclutter themselves. The input of the community is required for the integrity of the individual psyche. To put it another way, it takes a village to organize a mind. So I'm sure like a lot of you guys are coaches, consultants, you work with clients, and you probably notice like whenever you go on a coaching call or whenever you get on a call with clients or if you're speaking on stage or something like that, some brilliance comes out that might have not come out when you're just sitting there alone in your desk, right? I think that's because when we're live and interacting with people live, like our brain goes into this overdrive mode and it starts connecting all the dots. And this is how we can like truly learn about ourselves, our ideas and values and all of that. And that's why the small groups are so important. No matter how many times like you sit there alone trying to figure out, here's my story and what's the lesson of it. You can do all that you want all day. It's just not going to come to you. But then as soon as you share a story and then you listen to somebody else's story, it's like, that reminds me of this. And once you start that conversation, you can quickly get to like a conclusion where like, the lesson of this story was this. And this is why without this group conversations, sharing stories, Night Owl Nation doesn't really work. I always say, if you're not in a small group or if you're not in a big group, you're not really in Night Owl Nation. In Night Owl Nation, when you give feedback in circle, the giving feedback is the exercise. Because what's going to happen is you're going to write your story and you're going to think it's amazing and you're going to share it. You're going to be like, this story is dope. And then you're going to go read other people's story and I'm going to give you instruction on how to give feedback. And you're going to go and criticize their work and critique this person didn't do this. And after you give feedback, what you're going to do is you're going to realize, like my story also sucked. And then you're going to come back and you're going to realize all the flaws in your own story. So giving feedback is actually part of the exercise of doing your assignment or doing your exercise. So let's do a quick recap of last week's assignment, last week's exercise. What did you learn about yourself from last week's exercise? Just go ahead and raise your digital hand if you want to share.
The thing I learned after doing the assignment is that whatever we face in childhood or whatever we experience in childhood is reflected in your adulthood. For example, for the story bank, I wrote that I was really scared of the loud voices because my parents used to have arguments and I used to be there. So I got scared because of loud voices. And when I was doing this assignment, I found that it still happened with me, even at this age. If someone is shouting in loud voices, I still get scared. And when I was a kid, a dog bite me and I had to visit doctor every month. I didn't even remember, but for the assignment, I start remembering. And then I found that I love dogs, but sometimes I get scared subconsciously when I see dogs and if it resembles to that dog which bites me.
Yeah.
So I think the thing I found is that whatever you do in childhood, whatever your experiences are, is reflected in your adulthood. That's what I learned about myself.
Awesome. Thank you. It's so relatable.
I learned so much from that exercise. Even though, as my group knows, I write my assignments on the train now. I have no time. But it was very interesting to write a story bank. It was very interesting to write a story bank. The first thing I noticed is I remember things I didn't think that I remember. When I first heard you talking about the exercise, I thought the things I would write are like the landmarks or like the high turning points in my life, but those were not the things I wrote. I wrote like small details that I didn't even know that I remembered, like eating. Like when I lived in Yemen, my brother and I used to sneak out during our parents' naps to eat we had grapevines in our yards too, and one of them is we liked it sour before it's ripe. So and they told us not to do that. So we used to sneak out and eat it. And that's such a happy memory for me. I didn't even realize that I remember that until when I was writing my story bank. It was the things that I didn't know that I remember and were so detailed and wholesome for me. The thing I learned about myself too is I love change to the point that my brain is something Franco said, Franco's grave, is that my brain thinks that this is not permanent in my life, everything that happens, because through childhood, I've changed countries, I've changed in the same country, I changed where I lived, I changed schools, and every time I have new friends, even though I keep with old memories and old places and old friends and everything, I'm so great with communicating with people and keeping them in my life. But because of that, because I'm good at doing this, I just can't settle down. I get so on edge when I live in one place. Like in Canada itself, I've been here for 11 years. I've changed 10 homes. And every time I think it's a must for me to change this house, you know? It's a must for me to go there and discover this new place because I don't have any fear. You know how some people are staying in one place because they don't want to change? For me, it's the opposite.
I wonder
am
if
ready.
I'm like that too.
Yeah.
Because I move every couple of years too. And
Yeah.
she's just like, why do we have to always move? But it's because I moved around a lot as a child. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I would love to know. I've always like envied people who stayed in one place, have one childhood, and this is their family home, you know?
Yeah.
Especially like this is a new thing to me after we lost like everything, the house in the world, recent war in Sudan, because I always thought I'll just go and my like everything I've lived is already there. Like it's there. I don't need to go now, right? But now we lost it and I'm experiencing this loss, and it's just, I'm thinking, why can't I just sit in one place? Is it a bad thing? It's a good thing? I don't know.
I discovered there are much more memories inside of me than the ones I keep telling myself or retelling myself that happened recently. And what helped me is to divide, like to have these 6 different periods that really helped me to see, oh, wow, it hasn't always been this dark or this heavy or this just business thought or the mom part. There were so many different stages and I learned so much. Also, I found that most memories came with a life lesson, some smaller, some bigger. And I really struggled with the part where we had to look for patterns in them. I could not define any, but what really helped me is you guys sharing it in the comments after the weekly assignment. That really helped me. So I might redo I think I will redo the assignment.
Yeah. So let's move into this week's topic, how personality affects your storytelling. What makes you different? Why should I listen to you over Jay Shetty? Why should I listen to you over Mel Robbins? What makes you different? And that's what your About page is really about, right? It's not about, I solved this problem. There are plenty of experts that solve that problem. That's why I think talking about your why, your passion, your hero's journey is not really what your brand is about. Recently, what I figured out is the best way to write your About page is not through your hero's journey, but through how your weakness became your strength. If Jeff Bezos tried to run his company like Apple, he would have failed. If Steve Jobs tried to run his company like Amazon, he would have failed. So they both had to nurture, to work hard, have the discipline, delay gratification, do all of those things to become successful. But how they became successful are two totally different. And it's because they knew what their strength and weakness was, and they would double down on that. That's why they became successful. So it's so important for all of us to know what our strengths and weaknesses are, what our personality traits are, so that we can determine how we're going to be successful. Every single one of you guys could be the best in the world at something. Like, so you have to find that one thing that you're going to be successful in. We were all brainwashed. Like when I was in school, when I took the SAT, I did terrible in verbal. So in SAT back then, there's verbal and there's math. And I aced the math. I got like 800 on the math every time. But then in the verbal, I was terrible. I got like 400. I think you get like 200 for just writing your name. But I kept failing the verbal part. So what my parents did was they sent me to an SAT school and they just had me work on the verbal and not the math. So that's kind of how we're brainwashed. We're brainwashed to work on our weaknesses, right? So if you're getting a C in your math and you're getting A in your chemistry, they're going to say work on your math, right? So that as adults, we do the same thing. We try to work on our weaknesses. And what happens is when you're not developing your strength and you're constantly just working on your weakness, all you're doing is you're just becoming lukewarm. Why your brand personality is your brand. And you know why you shouldn't try to be the next Gary Vee, trying to be the next Oprah, trying to be the next Mel Robbins, but be the first you. In every little thing we do, my personality wouldn't allow me to deliver mediocre shit. My personality wouldn't allow me to like separate the designer, developer, and come up with this like automated factory system of making websites. My personality wouldn't allow that. And that's why I set up processes like did it. And you guys, every one of you are already doing that, whether you know it or not. Some of you guys wash the dishes right after you eat. Some of you guys leave it there and then maybe like every couple of days you wash it. Those are subconsciously processes that you've set up without really knowing. And it's your personality that's allowing you to do that. And you're probably doing the same thing in your business. So we need to pay attention to that and see what are the processes that I've subconsciously set up in my business and my personal life because of my personality. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about what are the things that people around you say about you. For me, my mom used to always say, it's like, son, you're always getting ripped off. You're so naive. People are always taking advantage of you. And almost everybody around me, my friends, the closest people that are around me have all said that. And now I refuse to believe that. I'm like, what? No, I'm not. I'm not naive. I'm not stupid. I'm a smart entrepreneur. I don't let people take advantage of me. So you're automatically going to get defensive about the thing that people say about you. But the fact that they say that about you means it's true. And the reason why you get triggered and you're like, oh no, get defensive and you're trying to like say you're not is also because it's true. Because if it really wasn't true, it wouldn't bother you at all. So go ahead and raise your hand if you can think of something that people say about you.
I already know that I'm an overthinker, but I will be so unaware of it because I'll be talking to a friend and they'll point it out that I'm doing it. And I'm like, no, I'm not,
okay.
you know, but like, I totally am. So that's by far
good.
Without question.
I just, when you said the thing about dishes, I felt guilty. Yeah, I tend to do what's fun before I do what I really need to have to do. So the same in work too. I rather do the homework of none instead of doing the administrative things. So that goes.
Do people say that about you?
My wife says so.
Okay, good. Okay.
So I often get, oh my God, you are so controlling. And I'm like, I'm not. I just know how to do it.
So you get defensive about it.
Yeah, I used to get defensive about it, but then I saw myself right after I heard several comments, and it was a similar situation. Then I saw myself and I stopped and I'm like, oh my God, I am controlling right now.
So this week's exercise is to tell a story about how your weakness actually became your biggest strength. And this is actually what makes you different, your brand different, what makes you unique, what makes you stand out from the rest of the crowd. I'm gonna finish off like I always do with the little quote. The reason why I told you to listen to other people, not try to come up with your own weaknesses, is because, like I said, we're biased when it comes to our own weaknesses. And the reason why we were looking for those 5-second moments, like the things that we actually did wrong, the things that people told us what we did wrong through actions, is because other people see us and they see us for who we really are. Like self-awareness isn't, oh, I know myself. Like, no, that's why I think 85% of people in the world are not self-aware. They have no idea who they really are. And it's because there's an idea of what we want to be. That's why it's so important in this exercise. You let other people tell you what your weaknesses are. Okay, so here's the quote. You're simply not an atheist in your actions. And it is your actions that most accurately reflect your deepest beliefs. Those that are implicit, embedded in your being, underneath your conscious apprehensions and articulable attitudes and surface level self-knowledge. You can only find out what you actually believe rather than what you think you believe by watching how you act. You simply don't know what you believe before that. You are too complex to understand yourself. Thank you, everyone. Just come back next Sunday. That's all I ask. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week and see you all next Sunday.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Sunday.
Bye, everyone.